The following is a conversation with Adam Drake. Adam has an incredible story. He was an alcoholic for over 10 years before turning his life around and starting his own company. Adam and his team work with kids and adults in the prison systems, giving them another opportunity through community, exercise, and teamwork. He has helped countless people find a way out of what seems to be the endless cycle of the criminal justice system. Adam encourages people to bear responsibility for their own lives. One important lesson he has taught me is that it's easy to criticize an issue from the outside, but it's much, much harder to get the work done from within. I hope you all enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And with no further ado, I present Adam Drake. Adam, how are you?
I'm good, Addy. You?
Hey, good, thank you. I have to make a confession to the viewers. This isn't our first time doing this. We've sat here last time for an hour and a half, and I forgot to plug in this audio mixer to the computer. So the whole time we were recording, it just wasn't. And I found out after you'd left, and I was like, "Great episode, Adam! Great episode! Thanks for that." And I was spewing. So my apologies, and thanks for coming back.
No worries. It was a dress rehearsal, as I said on the way in today, and I also love your company, so it's a good chance to catch up. So
Cool.
good.
Hey, I'd love to, for me and the viewers to hear about your journey. You've gone through an adventurous life, would you call it?
Yeah. It's,
Ups and downs?
I was only thinking about that the other day. It's been a really interesting journey.
Really?
Oh, yeah, like just from day one. But yeah, there's the highs, the massive highs, and then there's the massive lows. And I think these days I just try to find some consistency in the middle.
Yep.
Because I think when you're younger, you enjoy things at a huge level, but there's a downside to that as well. And that's, my own journey with alcohol was one that was a pretty full-on journey. But, the thing, I don't even think I shared it with you in our dress rehearsal, but when I was about 23, that was the first time I ever picked up a drink. It wasn't as though I was sort of drinking from 12, 13, 14. And, I remember it was only, 8.5, 9 years ago, I was literally under a tree in Cullen Bay with 3 bottles of wine in my blue bag, and I just hit rock bottom in my life, and I was crying up. I'd just come up from Tennant Creek where I was running a sport and rec, but to be honest, I was an absolute mess there. And life's just done this really beautiful shift, but the only person in control of your shift is you. And I've worked that out is, it's a chance to change. And there was a psychologist who I was seeing after I'd got out of rehab. I went to Banyan House where we actually run the program now. And I remember the psychologist saying, "Adam, when are you going to stop waiting for everybody else to save you? And when are you going to save yourself?" And that was like this moment in my head, Addy, where I just went, "Wait, look out. I'm actually in control of that. I don't need people to save me. I actually can do this." And then I've realised I'm in control of my choices, my thoughts. It's time to make balanced choices, and that's the name of my company.
So if we go back a little bit in time,
Yep.
You were 23 when you picked up your first alcoholic drink. How quick was it until you just spiraled downwards?
Yeah, I think, I was doing theatre. I was doing a theatre degree at Griffith University. So I've always had a bit of anxiety in my life. Like it's this nervous energy. And I sometimes say it's a blessing because it's a thing that actually helps you get up and do what you need to do. But on the downside of it, it can be hard. So I remember before I'd go on stage with theatre shows and different things, I started to go, "Oh, you know what? Cheeky little beer here might be okay," because it makes me feel more confident. So the spiral, I'd probably ask my friends, but I reckon I was late 20s when I started to spiral a bit. Then it started to affect my work into my sort of late 20s, going into my 30s when I was an actor touring shows around. But I kind of justified it by going, "Oh, I'm an artist, I'm an actor, I do this theatre stuff." And it's like, you're going to have a drink with your mates afterwards. And the footy culture that I was in at the time, playing a lot of sport. So I kept thinking I was okay. But then you get a real rude shock down the track when people start saying your personality changes a bit when you're drinking and things like that.
So you kind of use the beer before your shows as like an anxiety relief kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And then if I was really struggling with withdrawals, because when you're having alcohol withdrawals, everything goes shaky inside. So if you've got any anxiety anyway, it's going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
And so I'd look to top it up the next morning. I remember a mate saying to me, oh, you know, if you have a beer the next morning, it actually helps level you out. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, cool, that's a good idea. Not a good idea.
I did. Yeah. So it's funny how that works. If you have a hangover, so when you're drinking that night, your blood sugar level goes high, and then it slowly starts to plateau and then decrease. And so that decrease the next morning is what the hangover is. So that instant high and then the slow decrease. And if you drink the next morning, it cures the hangover.
Yeah.
But then the hangover is like 2 times worse the next day. So it catches up on you.
Yeah.
But a funny thing an interesting thing I read about the anxiety. It's fascinating how the human brain works. I work at the court, and I remember when I first started, I would get nervous, and I would have to chew something or have something in my mouth, otherwise I'd feel like vomiting. You know that feeling that anxious feeling you get.
Yeah.
And I read about it, and what your brain does is that if there's a challenge or a confrontation in front of you, say you're a really anxious person and you can't go out in public, like that is your fear. You don't want to be around people. The shopping mall, something bad happened to you, you fell over, and you're anxious. Then the next time you get in your car, you're anxious. You look at the shopping mall and you turn around. Your brain has deemed that shopping mall from then on to be a danger.
Yeah, right.
So essentially, what my brain had done, probably your brain to theatre, was like deem that to be a kind of a danger or an anxious place. Yeah. And the only way to cure that was beer, or in my case, something in my mouth. And I've learned through that book that the best way to confront that is just to go straight through.
Yeah.
So I just dealt with that anxious feeling, and I just said, this is for the better, and I programmed my brain, which is really interesting.
It's funny you say that, Ad, because I actually reckon that keeping your calm, I always say calmness is like a superpower. And the things that you used to be able to, the altered states you can get yourself to by drinking or taking whatever you take, whether that's medication or whether it's something else, you can get there, but you've got to do it internally yourself. And so I can get myself to complete calm. I can get myself to overjoyed and excited with breath work or with meditation or with, and so there is other ways to do this. And I think a lot of young people think to get out of this sadness or this anger or whatever's inside me, I've got to go and do something and drink something. And I go, no. This is within you. You can actually do some box breathing, or you can do some meditation, or with some visualization exercises, and we can actually get you into a better headspace. And when I realised that the theatre degree that I've got with my fitness stuff, and then studying a lot of this stuff around positive, I suppose you call it futures thinking or hope theory, then all of a sudden you can help these young people maybe not go down a track that you went down. And I feel like as adults, that's our responsibility. Is anything that we've collected in our invisible bag for life, maybe we could hand it on to the young ones while they're young, so they don't necessarily go down the same track.
Why is it that alcohol is such a luring kind of substance for young people or adults even to try and escape? What do you think?
To escape is one thing, but I also see it's a bit of a rite of passage for a lot of people. We get a drink at what age? 18. Oh, I'm going to do it before that. So we set up this. We set it up as like an adult thing, and then we watch the way the adults do it. I haven't met too many great drinkers. There are people who can have their wines and all of a sudden they pull up all right the next day. But I don't know. We have a tendency as Australians that it's like something we must do. What I'm really loving now that I don't drink is challenging that. And, even to myself of going, if I'm at a party, I can have a 0 alcohol beer because it looks like I'm drinking. Wow, that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Like that it's not okay to have a glass of water or a soda water in my hand. Oh, no, you're soft. Well, am I? Or am I actually just choosing a healthier pathway for my brain? The other thing is to get off the stuff. Oh, wow. Where do we start on how we help people step away from something that's been with them for a lifetime. And my dad, he passed away a few years ago, and Dad used to love to have a wine and whatnot when he was, all through life I saw Dad with wine. And I go, that's something I learnt from Dad. And it's not something I choose that I want to hold on to anymore. So for my kids, I don't want to hold that to them and say, this is something you must do. I want to be in control of it. I remember my old grandfather used to say to me, make sure that you're in control of it. Don't you be controlled by it. I think it's a good one.
This was when you were going through it, or this was before that addiction?
That was just comments that, got dropped to me over the years. The other one my grandfather said to me that I'll never forget is balance is everything.
Yep.
And again, you look at the name of my company, Balanced Choice. I've realised in life balance is somewhere I prefer to be than extreme. But in saying that, I just finished breaking a world record for push-ups, so maybe every now and again I go a bit extreme.
Congrats, mate.
No.
How many push-ups?
So 64 in 1 minute with 100 pounds on my back. And well, look, it's still got to go through Guinness Book of Records, but my coach, he's a stickler for form, he said, I'll give you 60. So he said, the last 4, mate, I don't know. And I was just like, thanks, Churchy, no worries. So I do those extreme things, but then I match that extreme with going and doing my meditation or getting out on my paddleboard or having a surf, because if I don't, then I know myself, I almost stay in that heightened state. So it's about trying to control, where you're at, where your energy's at when you're around others. Yeah.
So, okay, so how old were you when the man told you to take control of your life? You're 23 when you started? Was it 27, 28?
Oh, the psychologist?
Yeah.
Yeah, her name was Tina, actually,
Right.
and I just got out of Banyan House, out of the rehab, so I would probably been 38.
30, wow. Yeah. So it was a long, long journey.
Yeah, and
right.
She was, kind of highlighted the fact, I think she'd seen that I was waiting on everybody else to come and save me, rather than actually owning it myself. And because people can come and save you, maybe you don't pick up the skills to be able to save yourself. There's another quote that I love, and it is, how can Father Greg Boyle from Homeboy, where we just came back from America, and he says, how can somebody soothe themselves when they've never been soothed? And I like that because I didn't know how to soothe me. I knew how to be around my mates. I knew how to have this energy for life, and people always said, you're charismatic, you're energetic. But I wanted to find that other thing. But if you haven't been shown it, it's pretty hard to capture it. So I've really done a lot of hard work on the inside now. And so, with Balanced Choice, we talk about getting fit inside and out. And I'm way more interested in what's it like to do a push-up on the inside when things start to feel hard? How do you get back up when all the things around you seem like they're coming in and they're crumbling around you? And like, how do you get yourself back up? I want that quality in my life.
Yeah. I've been fascinated with my interest in motivational speakers from a relatively young age, probably like 15, 16, I started listening to that stuff. And, it just felt different when someone just told me, not directly, but through the video, to just take responsibility and control of your life. And I was like, wow. And I think it's unfortunate that some people view that as too much or pushing the limit or, but I love it, mate. And I think it's extremely important. And so, yeah.
I look at guys. I've got my own crew that I listen to. Les Brown, Brene Brown. They have both
Brene
the same
Brown's a
last
big one.
name. Yeah.
Cool.
TD Jakes. There's some people out there who just, when they speak, they pick up. And part of my morning routine, I always say it's really important in life that you've got good bookends in your day. You start well and you finish well. What happens in the middle of that sandwich, who knows? Because some things you just can't control. But if you get up real early, you get yourself moving, you listen to stuff that picks up your spirit, you then slowly look inside to make sure you're feeling okay about the day ahead. Write your to-do list or whatever you got to do, and then go and do your day. And on the way down, bring yourself down, find your calm, get ready to have a great night's sleep. And for me, that's it. But the big part of it is exactly what you just said. That motivational speaker, let them pick you up. Listen to what they've got to say. Soon you find yourself talking a bit like that. That's
Right.
cool.
It's cool. It is cool. And you try and push that onto someone else.
Well, yeah, maybe not push it. You might just go, hey, this helps me.
Cool.
Because I always think, everybody's got a different recipe of how to bake their cake. Stop trying to use somebody else's recipe to bake your cake. You can grab a couple of ingredients for it, but you and I are different people. So there's going to be things that are going to help me that don't necessarily help you, and vice versa.
So what has your journey taught you about yourself? Is it that you have a bit more mental resilience than you think? Is it that you're stronger? Is it you found a new perspective on your life? What is it? What did it teach you that 10 or so years?
Yeah, look, I put it down to I fell in love with myself.
Cool.
I didn't even like myself when I was a drinker. I believed all the negative things that had been said about me, and a lot of those had been said by myself to me. And now when I look in the mirror, I go, geez, I'm proud of you. You're doing great.
Brilliant.
You're really doing great in life, and you're a great dad, and you're running a good business, and you're a good person. But deep down, I like being in my skin. And, there's nothing like being able to be in the skin that you're in and like it. Nothing worse than when you hate it. And it's like, how do you change that? And because I've been to both extremes, I much prefer this way. And so I know what can be the sidetracks. I know when things, it's almost like in life, you're in a lift, I say, and every level you go up in life, the doors will open and there'll be something there that you might want to check out for. But when you find yourself bypassing those things, life gets better and better and better. So, yeah.
Wow. What advice would you give to someone going through a tough time at the moment?
Push-ups.
Yeah.
Not as in physical ones, but an internal one. Do a push-up. Get back up. Go again. Have a look at your values. Have a look at who you are right now and whether you like that person.
Yep.
And then find people around you who are going to say things that are good about you. Or start saying good things to yourself. Even if it's one thing, you get up every morning and say, you know what, I've got a good heart. I'm better than I was yesterday. Just start to believe that you are a good person because, and this is going to sound weird because I've been in prisons throughout the whole of Australia and over in America and the whole bit, but I haven't met a bad person. Not one. I met a lot of people who made really bad choices and are at a bad place in their life, but I've still seen the good in them. And I know that could be controversial, but I always say there's enough people judging everybody else. I don't need to be another one. Just want to, every time I meet somebody, love them the best way I can, be kind to them, and just see what happens when that happens. Because usually what you give out has a funny way of coming back to you.
And then it sparks something within someone else, and then there's a ripple effect.
Just like that little rock in the pond, eh? And those waves, they're incredible, mate. And when you live it consistently for a long period of time, those waves will blow you away because they bounce back off the shore and then come back to you. And it's like nuts. And that's what, like the Facebook posts that I get from kids who've been locked up in Dondale, and I say Dondale because that's the way I read it when the media puts it out there is such a negative stigma to the place. Some of the most beautiful people I've ever met have worked in that place. Some of the most beautiful people I've ever met have been in that place. Doesn't mean it's right. But we want to just comment about things and do nothing about it. Let's start as a community doing something positive together about it. Those young people are our responsibility, not just their parents, not just the department, not just whoever. It's yours, it's mine, it's the people next door to us right now. And if we actually, there's a fella called Yinamala out in a community called Gun, and he said to me, Adam, we all need to sit around the fire and hold hands. That's the only way we're going to get our young people going well again. And I went, holding hands, but that's symbolic. We just need to unite. And, Mother Teresa said it well when she said, sometimes we all forget that we belong to each other. I like that quote.
Wow. So, okay. I love that as well. So what is let's start with the balanced choice. and I'll get back to where we were just now. What inspired you to create the balanced choice, and also how did you go about it?
Yeah, okay. So balanced choice came out of looking at the things that helped me through life. So I had my theatre, my fitness, and my hope theory. My hope theory comes from my uncle, who's a doctor of future studies and foresight, and he's got a brain that's way bigger than mine. And so whenever I don't know something, I say, "Hey, Uncle Pete, Peter Hayward, can you help me?" And he'd be like, "Oh, Adam, try learned optimism or try perma." And I'm like, "Oh, this stuff's wicked." And I just dive into the books and keep going. The theatre gave me, although it was where I started my drinking, it did give me a sense, though, that when you're on stage, you can actually be confident. You can be sad. It's a choice. If I'm, as an actor, going to make the choice to play sad, then I can quickly flip it to excited or happy or whatever. And I went, this is interesting. This is really interesting that we can get on a stage and change emotion so quickly. How come we get so stuck on emotion when we're not on stage? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. So then the idea of being able to role play life, just like our dress rehearsal when we didn't record it properly, this is way better than the one we did. And it was meant to happen that we actually didn't get that right. Sometimes you've got to practice some stuff before you go out to the real world and do it or put it out there. And for kids I work with, being able to rehearse situations that on the outside you've made a really bad choice and that's why you're in here, well, let's practice that till we get it better. I like that. So, and then fitness. Fitness is one of those things that when I move my body, I start to breathe better. When I start to move my body, my brain feels better. So I went, there's something about this moving thing that makes me feel a bit better. And then next thing you know, I doing push-ups in Dondo with the kids, and I'm going, the rhythm of this, the unison that we've got together while we're doing it, the conversations we're having when we're next to each other, not looking in each other's eyes. I'm like, this is fascinating stuff. And so those little key pieces all became part of the Balanced Choice program. Then I went, okay, who's gonna look at this thing? And I got encouraged by Monique Gale, Sally Cohen. There were a couple of people up in the NT who said, Adam, you need to write up a program with all the stuff you do. Because at that point I was working with Corrugated Iron, Youth Arts Theatre. There was a group called Counterpunch I was doing a bit of work with. And so I drew it up. And look, if I was in government and I read the document that I handed them, they're probably mad for taking it on. You know, like, well, what is this? Because I'm not great at that stuff. But they gave me 3 hours a week. And that 3 hours a week now turns into 16 staff members. And it's just throughout Australia. And Ashley Detention Centre got us the other day, and Port Phillip Prison, and Banksy is interested in the program. And going to South Australia, Cavan want to see the program. America asked for it. I'm like, what's happened? It's just
Brilliant.
Yeah, and it's a little thing that happened in the NT, you know? And I go, that's cool.
So you approached the government with your proposals about what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Through fitness and through whatever else.
Yeah.
And they accepted it for 3 hours a week.
Yeah.
And then it just developed from there.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation, Eddie, where someone said to me, I said, I just want 1 more hour a week because there's actually some other kids in there that we're not getting to. And they're like, no, you're just getting 3 hours a week. That's what you're going to get. So I went and saw John Elfrink, who was the minister at the time. And I'm like, can I please just have this 1 extra hour? No, it's not there at the moment. And guess what ended up happening? It went from 4 to 6 to 8 because sometimes if you tell somebody no, it is the greatest thing you can do for them because you walk out of there going, oh, I'm going to prove you wrong. And we did, and that's cool.
Brilliant. Yeah. What's your favourite part of the job? What's your favourite part of doing these exercises with the kids and seeing their progress, or you know, what do you love about it? What makes you happy?
Yeah, I just closed my eyes because I just felt it when you said it. And it is actually my staff doing beautiful work and seeing their lives transform by the kids. I always say you've got to be reachable when you're with these young people. Father Greg Boyle from Homeboy, who I just love, he shares that. He goes, you've got to be reachable when you're with these kids. And all that staff that are working with Balanced Choice, they've got their own journey, their own story, but they sit alongside these young people and they just love them, and the kids love them back even more. And I'm seeing their lives transform by the kids. And the thing that I'm loving next is that the kids are then going to evolve into that space and start to get jobs with balanced choice. They'll do us all out of a job one day, and they'll say, you know, I used to be in here. Just like I can say when I go to Banyan House, I was in that room over there, in detox, because I was an alcoholic and I'm still an alcoholic and I can't go to the bottle shop because if I do, I'll buy a six-pack and I'll start again, and I've got to look at it that seriously. And for me to know that those kids are going to go on a similar journey if they choose to, that's beautiful.
There's something about a story, isn't it, that captures people more than just telling someone to do something. You know, it's why the Bible is such a popular book, is because there's lessons in there, but there's stories before them, and they just give so much more meaning. Is that the goal then for the kids you work with to just take you over one day?
Yeah, so when I finished this world record recently, I actually called out straight away to a kid in Catherine who I've been working with since he was grade 1. And I had him on my shoulders when I was working at Corrugated Iron Youth Arts all those years ago. And someone said to me, you know, what's next? And I went, well, yeah, I want to try 200 pounds on my back because I want to see what that feels like. But when all of it's done, I want that young fella to break every record I've ever put out there because he's got so much within him and he's carried way more in this world than I have ever had to carry in regards to how his life's been. Imagine that kid smashing a record. Sitting back and seeing that, Braz, that's the work.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So I know you don't do the business for yourself, but what do you feel when I saw a video about a kid from Dondale who had done the Balanced Choice program? I don't know if you know his name. You probably do, but he said that he wanted to be a ranger outside of school. He wanted to go back to his family. He wanted to get a job, or, you know, is that what you do this for?
I do it. It's a great question because the thing about why I do Balanced Choice is I owe it to the kids. And the reason I say I owe it to the kids is those kids loved me before I loved myself. The least I can do now is love those kids and create a system and be a part of creating a system where we unite with other groups, other people, other communities, and we find a better way to do what currently is being given to our young people. And I say it because there is huge concern about the system. It's through our papers all the time. I reckon the system itself would say it doesn't work. So if as a society we're getting to a point where we're understanding that locking up kids isn't great for kids, well, isn't it time we actually totally transform it and change it? And I want to get a bit creative about that. I've got theatre in me, so let's get creative. Let's get a few people who have been in this space for a long period of time, not people who have just turned up because they're an expert for a few days. Let's get people who've been in the space and understand it, and then let's create something way different.
What do you mean by it isn't been done properly? I mean, I guess it's pretty obvious, but from your point of view, what can be done? Is it just the unity? Is it the love that we need, that we're lacking at the moment?
No, it's the working together. It's the adults behaving like adults so that kids can be kids. I always say that. If adults behave like adults, it allows kids to be kids. The problem's when adults start behaving like kids because then the kids feel like they've got to step up and become the adult. And so for me, that's actually transformative if, as a society, we say we're adulting really badly, all of us. I own it. You know, I was a terrible influence on my daughters when they were first growing up. I look at the way, as a society, we treat each other and I go, of course the kids are like that. You know, the other day I was in Parliament House and they were talking about balanced choice, and it was beautiful to listen to Minister Gosling share about how balanced choice picks up young people and whatnot. And I go, actually could start here. Imagine if question time looked a little bit differently. Imagine if, you know, the way that we were with each other, and less bullying, less harassment towards each other, less finding our group and it's just our group. That's the stuff that really damages. And I believe as a society, if we can get to the point where there's a bit more unity, a bit more acceptance of each other and treating each other with kindness, then that's a great start.
We have a tendency to just form groups, as you said, and regard people as evil or bad or not on our level. And I think that's definitely what's needed. Some form of unity. The media and the newspapers definitely don't help in that.
Yeah, but they could. Someone said to me once, newspapers, putting good news stories in newspapers doesn't sell newspapers. And I said, have we tried it?
Don't think so.
No. And so
I guess there are a few organisations that maybe try to do it, but yeah, I think there needs to be almost a societal shift towards, hey, we're sick of seeing this negative stuff. Get us the good stuff. We want to hear the positive that's happening.
Yeah.
But go on.
Oh no, I feel like with the newspapers, when they do put positive stories out there, they're great, and I love to read a good story. There's a reason why a newsreel finishes with a good news story, because you want to leave people feeling good.
Right.
Yeah, okay, well, doesn't that make a bit more sense if we did a bit more of it? Oh, yeah, but then we lose the sense that the media is the one that sets out change. Maybe they're the start of change by putting stuff out there, and I get that. But could we do it better? Rather than accusing people who have been working in facilities for long period of times, who are good people with families, and all of a sudden they can't walk in a shopping centre anymore because they're getting death threats from people. Like, let's think about the impact of everything we put out to the world before we put it out there. Let's be kinder, and let's work together, and let's go hang out in some libraries we don't usually hang out in. And I talk about people as libraries. If you keep hanging out with the same people, you keep going to the same library. Wouldn't it be interesting to start going to a different library and start hanging with some different people? Oh, no, because they've got different beliefs to me. Oh, wow, wouldn't it be interesting to understand a bit more about that? Like, I don't know.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
Oh, I just see it as, I don't think it's rocket science. And I feel like if we did more of it, it'd be awesome. But all we can do is lead. I read a quote the other day, something like, lighthouses don't go running around trying to save anyone. They just stand there and they shine. I like that.
That's brilliant.
Just shine.
Yep.
Keep shining. Keep living the best life you can. And hopefully you stop a few boats from crashing into the rocks.
Cool.
That's good.
One of the authors that I'm reading at the moment says exactly that. And it's contrary to what you see, because, and I don't know if I have a problem with it or not, but you see so many young people protesting or advocating or whatever they're doing, and fair enough to them, but there's something more beautiful and more powerful about setting your own house in order and then letting others be inspired by you, rather than trying to preach your virtuosity or tell people how to live their lives or change them, because that's predicated on the assumption that you're sorted. And most people aren't. And the people that are don't do that, don't go out and tell people how to live their lives. So that was really inspiring for me, to someone to just tell me that hey, you don't need to, at 21, you don't need to try and fix the world or save the world, or you just need to work on you, and it'll follow. It'll come, and there's a pathway there. So I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, I sometimes think that the things that maybe you've done that you're not proud of are the things you need to speak about the most. So it's the reason why I lead a lot of my stories with the fact I was an alcoholic and I was homeless for a period of time because I'd been stealing alcohol from my parents' fridge. And I lead with those stories because your story can be the keys to unlock somebody else's story. So why do we hold on to all these things? And people go, oh, you're an oversharer. Oh, well, good. Excellent. People's opinion of you is none of your business anyway. So you need to live your life. You need to, I believe, don't try to hide stuff under the carpet. I think when those things happen, there's a reason why that doesn't feel right in your gut, because it's not right. And how do we find a way to be more authentic as people and just put out there to the world our blemishes, like I sometimes think the media grabs hold of people's pasts. Imagine if you've already shared it. You've got no one holding you to anything because you've shared the fact that you used to be an alcoholic or whatever in your life. So I like that stuff. Let's be a bit more upfront. And then the whole world might talk about their mental health a bit more instead of being worried about sharing their mental health and then losing their job because no one's going to hire them because they were on a mental health plan. Or when did that decide? When did we decide that was such an evil thing? I just can't believe it.
It's interesting, isn't it? So you're all for people sharing that. I mean, obviously, but you accept that and you love that people sharing their stories. You think there needs to be more of it.
Yeah, I think if we put it out there, there's less of a taboo about those topics, and people talk about not wanting to talk about suicide. Young people want to talk about it that I've been around. They want to talk about the sadness of it, but we all got scared as a society to even touch base about it. But how are we going to support each other if it's a topic we're never going to talk about? Like, I don't get that bit.
It's fascinating. You can tell when someone wants to talk about something, but there's a barrier holding them back. A few of my work colleagues, well, one of my work colleagues has a few times in the past week said that they needed just a mental health week, just a break. But it didn't extend past that. There wasn't a why. There wasn't a and I found that interesting, and I felt that I needed to ask them why, trying to flesh it out of them, and it felt that there was a barrier, and I think if that barrier was broken, if there was some sort of shift in thinking where I need a mental health week turns into I need a mental health week because it's quite clear when someone wants to talk about that, because why would they reference the first sentence and then stop? So, and I do it all the time too, when there's something I want to talk about, maybe it's just a sentence and then I stop. So I think that's something we can all work on for sure.
Well, I say with Balanced Choice, the Monday meeting is our most important catch-up, and we dial in from all around Australia, all the staff. And last week, Brianna, who's one of our staff members, she said to everybody, where's your self-care at? How are you at the moment? What are the signs for you that you know you're not good? And she asked us all these great questions, and we do that so often. We don't necessarily talk too much about the work. We talk more about how you're travelling, where are you at, and the discussions that happen around those squares is just beautiful. And I ended up saying last week that I've learned in my life to be able to work out what helps me come up and what helps me come down. So there's certain things. And so I can wake up in the morning and go, I'm a bit flat today. All right, that means I've got to listen to some motivational stuff. It means I've got to move a little bit. It means I've got to go, they're my things. Or if I'm up and I've got to, come down a little bit, I'll get out on your paddleboard. Feel the rhythm of the stroke as you're sort of going around that board and paddling around the lake, just slow everything down. And when you start to become the master of yourself, then you've got a chance to actually maybe pass on some stuff. But first you've got to actually get it with you. So, yeah, I like the idea that the BC crew are always talking to each other about how they are. And I love the fact that it's not an Are You OK day and we all carry yellow stuff. We actually do it all year round, and I'm really proud of that.
Great. What do you think about motivation versus discipline? Is there a fine line? Obviously there's a balance, but I'm a culprit for it. I do it all the time where I listen to a motivational video, go out for a run or go to the gym, and then the next 3 days I'm in bed, So what's that balance there between finding the motivation from those motivational videos and from your mates and then sticking with that routine?
Yeah, I find the reason why I set records for myself and things like that is it gives me a really clear destination. And so I'll discipline myself to get to somewhere. And that's an important part. My mate did say to me the other day, he goes, Adam, how do you get up every morning and do your push-ups and do your stuff? And I said, I just don't give myself a choice. Now, it doesn't mean that the intensity might be less some days. That's okay, because I know my body needs a quiet day and slowed down a little bit and whatnot. But it's honouring your commitments and agreements with yourself. I really am doing a lot of work at the moment about honour your agreements, and it feels good. That's discipline when you honour your agreement. But you also have the chance to change your agreement if you need to. So that's a discipline in itself. But the reason why agreements break down with people and with yourself is when you break it. But if you know you're going to break it, change the agreement a little bit. But don't move so far off track that you're just going to head down a bad path or a tough path. So, yeah, I've been loving some work around agreements lately. Motivation brings you up. It gives you a reason, yeah? But how do you keep it for a season? That's what I'm interested in. That's when discipline kicks in.
Right.
And I love it. Because once you start to discipline yourself, no one else needs to discipline you anymore because you're already doing it. That's cool.
It is cool. It's I've felt it. There's a difference between someone telling you, for example, your parents to do your homework, and then just getting the homework done by yourself. It's like you've almost transcended some part of your mental state and gone to the next level.
Yeah.
When you say that the kids loved you before you loved yourself, what does that mean? How did that happen?
Yeah, so every time I would walk into Donda, like even the first session I ever went there, obviously the kids would look at me and go, oh, who's this guy with dreadlocks, and try and work me out. But it wasn't too long before the kids were like, or the young fellas were like, oh, Adam's here. And I'd be like, oh, that's fascinating. Then when I sit and did the quote of the day, they'd open up and they'd share their life and a bit of their story with me. And then the Children's Commissioner coming down to do a report, and they're saying, oh, we love the Balanced Choice program, we loved it. And you start going, oh, man, these kids really care about me. And then I found myself sometimes, instead of writing a quote of the day, I'd write a letter, and I'd just say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm proud of you. I think you're amazing. I think you're an incredible young person. I think your future's going to be what you want it to be. And look, I'd just write this stuff down and I'd read it to them, and kids would get a bit teary and I'd get a bit teary. And I just realised we were on a journey of getting better together. And I'm still getting better. And like, I've been running this company for how long, and I do wellbeing, we do it all around us. But you've never got it together. You're just constantly trying your best and then checking in with these kids who'll keep you real quick. Like, it was funny because I remember a few weeks ago I went in to see a young fella in one of the centres, and he says, what's your name? Because I hadn't been in the centre before. I'm like, oh, Adam. He goes, yeah, you're from the Adams family, eh? And I go, yeah. I just said, whatever. Let it go. And then he goes, dreadlocks, they're dirty, they're disgusting. Yeah. I went, okay. And it just reminded me that this is something I read the other day too. It's people ask for love in the most unloving way sometimes. And so I found that these kids that I work with they'll give you what I call the acid test, where they'll call your names, they'll tell you look ugly, they call you. There was another kid, and I remember she said to me, Adam, you look like a rat. And I just laughed. I thought, oh, classic. But then the next day I went in to see her, and she goes, hey, Adam, I just want to let you know, that my dad passed away a while ago, and I'd really love it if I could call you Dad.
Wow. And
I went, because I didn't react to the rat call, because I didn't react to the Adams family call and the dirty dreadlocks, I earned the right for their love. Because they probably expect that most adults will go, well, stuff you little brat, that's why you're locked. No, really? We're going to go there, are we? Let's actually weather the storm and see what's behind the front.
That's, yeah. The kids tend to do that. They tend to test you. They tend to push the boundaries.
Of course, because most adults probably would have let them down. And so let's get this out of the way quickly. Let's just actually stuff it up right here so we don't even try to have a connection. Oh, you're different. You didn't react like the others react. Oh, let's give this a chance.
Wow.
And next thing, these kids are writing to you on Facebook when they get out. They're sending you photos of their kids when their kids are born, and it's an honour to be in their lives.
Just a bit of patience can go a long way, you think?
Oh, and love, yeah.
Yeah.
And just also I've never fixed a kid. Never. I've inspired a kid to change, but they had to do all the work. And that's the stuff. Inspire people by the way you're living.
What's the quote of the day, the exercises that you do with them? Run me through that. So you would go into Dondale, and what does an ordinary day look like for you and your staff? How many of you roll in?
It's just one worker.
One worker?
Yeah, so
cool. Per day?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so there'll be, but we've got lots of spaces. So it's not just Dondale. We also got the Girls Safe House. We've also got Salt Bush. We've also got Stringy Bark, Banyan House, and Team Health. The list goes on. And but one worker will go in. So today at 12 o'clock, I go into Dondale. I'll get in there. They'll tell me, Adam, you're in B block, H block, and G block. Yep. 1 hour each block. Okay, cool. Get in there. All right, let's get into it. They usually come up, they'll give me a big hug. Hey, Adam's back, because I haven't been there for a couple of weeks because there's a young fella, Breno, who's doing amazing work, and I've been in Tasmania in Ashley Detention Centre. And so they'll give me a big hug, and then we'll go out and we'll stretch up and we'll just smash a workout. And so I might say, let's try 20 different types of push-ups. And they love that workout. Big chest workouts.
Yeah, you get on a pump.
Totally.
Yeah.
But then there's others, that'll go, Adam, let's do legs today, or let's do abs today, or no worries, we'll do that. Their ideas are always way better than mine. And then we sit down and we do the quote of the day. And the quote of the day can be anything from something that I've heard one of the kids say. Sometimes the kids will actually give me the quote of the day, which is unbelievable when that happens. I remember one kid saying to me, don't use your struggles as an excuse, use your struggles as motivation. And that coming from a kid...
Something else.
Oh, mate, way better than my quote. Their quotes are heaps better. And I just take a bit of paper in, that are now colour, because about 5 years ago there was a young fella in there and he goes, Adam, everything in here is black and white. Could you bring some colour? Could you? And so I started taking photos of beautiful things and putting that behind the quote of the day. And then the Law Society were coming in. Arthur Moses was in the role at the time, and he said, who's the person bringing all these colourful quotes in? I want to meet this person. Next thing, I was doing a keynote at one of their big conferences, because he saw the value that we were actually trying to change the message. And every time we go in there, just want to bring some positivity, that's all.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the best quote of the day? Do you think that one? Do you think that one you said?
No, the one that I actually... So there's a young fella, and every time I see him, he's usually down Alice Springs. Every time I see him, I can hear him a mile away, because he'll see me and he'll go, oh, yeah, like this. And I go... but he reckons I do it after I finish push-ups. He reckons you always go, oh, yeah. And so he always tells me about two quotes. He goes, you know that quote about riding a bike? And I went, which one? He goes, life's... I've got to get it right, but a bad attitude's like a flat tyre on your bike. I've got to get it right. Sorry, Buzz. A flat tyre on your bike. No, your attitude's like a flat tyre on your bike. I lost it.
You lost it.
Sorry, brother.
Should we look it up?
Yeah, let's look it up. Your attitude. He'll tell me off for getting this wrong. Your attitude is like...
Here we go. I've got it. A bad attitude is like a flat tyre. If you don't change it, you'll never go anywhere.
That's the one. Great. So he loves that. He also loves life doesn't have a remote control. You've got to get up and change it yourself.
Cool.
And my favourite was one that I shared years ago that was every storm runs out of rain. And I love that because, that's symbolic of life. Just storms keep coming, but then they leave. And so we all know we're going to go through tough stuff. We'll get out the other side. Yeah. The other one, every storm is a good one, but since I've been surfing and Balanced Choice, we've got these little surfboards around our neck, and it's emotions, they're like waves. You've just got to choose which ones you're going to surf. I love that. So you can choose to stay locked on emotions if you want to, but that's a choice.
You talked about hope theory and spiral dynamics. Walk us through that. How do you implement that when you do the sit-down sessions with the kids, and what is it? What are those two things?
Yeah, so I always say don't get so stuck on the academic side of it that we don't do any work, but be mindful of what we stand for. Hope theory is just, when I read about it, Charles Schneider, and it was the work around pathway thinking. So if you, with young people, you can build their hope. And the way you do that is you set goals and you build agency alongside that young person. Now, how do you build agency in somebody? I've realised that if you tell people how amazing they are, if you tell them you're proud of them, if you tell them they can get there, that builds agency. When someone buys into that and they start to believe it, then they'll actually get there themselves. And so they'll set that goal and they'll go get that. That's how I talk about hope theory. We also talk about learned optimism. Learned optimism, again, this is Martin Seligman's work, and he talks about the fact you're looking at a cup and it's either 3/4 full or it's 1/4 empty. You know, which way you're looking at your life. But the one that I have been doing backflips over lately, because I just read it and went, that's what we do already, wicked. And it's PERMA. And again, Seligman's work, positive psychology movement, and PERMA, it stands for positive emotions, engagement, relationship, meaning, and achievement. And if you think about when you get alongside a young person, you're going to bring positive emotion. You want to engage with them. You want to make sure that you've got a relationship with that young person and it's got meaning and that you're going to achieve something together. I was in Catherine the other day and that young fella ran up to me. He says, how many push-ups are we doing today, Adam? I said, oh, what, 100? He goes, no, 250, let's go. There you go, there's your hope theory. Set a goal, let's build the agency, let's get there, and let's keep talking good to each other as we get there on that journey. If you can do that through a physical exercise, then you can start to talk about life the same way. All right, let's get that tracker and find a day that tracker's not going to be on you anymore because you've got out of the system and you don't have to have it anymore, and you're actually not even in the youth justice system anymore, and we've got you back at school. Let's set that goal. And then let's do a very similar thing. Let's do the hard work. Spirodynamics. Claire Graves' work, amazing, because it breaks up society into different colours. And blue represents, say, government, police. Red is sort of the activists, and green is kind of that environmental understanding and group. And it's about how, if we were going to talk about the young people, they would kind of be red, orange, and then you've got the system, which is blue. How do they act together? How are you when you're sitting with blue? So how's Adam when he's sitting with the cops talking about the young people? Then how am I with the kids when I'm with those young people? Now, how am I when they're together? And it's just an understanding of how are we with all the different groups that are out there, and how can we find a way to sit and connect? And I love that. But then they talk about second tier. Second tier is when you have a way to be all-encompassing around all. And that's the world that I like to live in, you know, that balanced choice in itself as an organisation, I hope, is known for its integrity, for the way that it walks its life, and that it actually can do things a little bit differently to maybe how we've done things before, and we can be a part of positive change with all those groups. Because every one of those groups in spiral dynamics is as important as the next one. The danger is when we think one's not. And isn't that life? Like, it's when we devalue a group of people, we're in trouble.
Because there's perspective in everyone. I've been thinking hard lately about whether impartiality, I don't know if I pronounced that right, impartiality, there we go, is the conclusion, you know? Like whether if you can believe something so strongly, that's on one side of the spectrum, have you considered all the other possibilities? And if you have, then would you be closer to the middle, you know, to the all-encompassing, all-inclusive group, you know, you've taken aboard every perspective. And whether if you really genuinely have done that, whether you just end up in the middle, whether you're just like, I think this, I accept this is why. And it's fascinating, and I sometimes push back on myself when I go too far on one side. When I think something so strongly, I resist, and I question whether I've taken aboard every single perspective there is. One of the most beautiful quotes that I actually talked about with the lady I did the last podcast with was the way to a good argument, to good understanding, is to understand the opposite side of the view, make that argument as strong as you possibly can, and then come to your conclusion.
Nice.
And that's beautiful, That's taking into account all the groups, all the people, all the different perspectives, and I think that's great.
Lean into what you don't know.
Yep.
I think that's a really important one. Like, the reason I moved to the Northern Territory was I was sitting in Burleigh Heads on the Gold Coast having a very nice life, went to a private school, I was studying theatre at university, and then I started touring theatre shows around, and I could have kept doing that life. But then Queensland Theatre Company started sending us off to all these different Aboriginal communities, and I went, you know what? I went to Arakoon and I went to Tennant Creek, and I was like, man, this is a different way to live. This is like, it's just different, and it's confronting for me when I got out here. I went, doesn't feel okay. So am I going to just comment on it, walk away from it, have no knowledge of it, and have an opinion, or am I going to lean into it? So I moved to Tennant Creek, and now some of the most beautiful people in my life are from Tennant Creek because I leant in. I started to understand the thing that I didn't understand, and I think that's really it, isn't it, Ad? Like, go and understand the things that offend you, because if they offend you, try to get a bit more understanding around why it causes so much friction inside you, and then work out after you've spent time with it or in it if you still have that opinion.
Yep. Rather than avoiding it.
Yeah, otherwise we walk away and we just make some cheap comment and we want to fight everyone and fight them because they're different to us because we never understood them. Man, I would have hated to live like that for the rest of my life.
We're all human. One of the quotes that I actually had a debate about someone with this. There's a famous philosopher who's long gone now, Carl Jung. I don't know if you've heard of him. Probably, actually, psychologist, not philosopher. But his theory was his final theory was that you can only achieve true fulfillment and true acceptance and happiness when you understand the evil that you are able to do. And that is, like, that's deep, man. That's you've really got to think about that. That's not trivial. That's accepting that I'm capable of doing bad things. Yeah. There is no such thing as bad people or good people. We're all capable, and it's about controlling that monster, I guess, inside me, which is in everyone. Yeah. And I thought, when I read that, I was like, wow, that's and that has led me on a path to definitely more acceptance, definitely from 2 years ago, where I would think there's evil. Like, how can you possibly think that? You must be stupid, or you must be heartless, no empathy. Like how are you coming to that conclusion? But Jung's perspective definitely opened that side of me. Another podcast that I listened to, there was a professor that said, I mean, this might be going a bit too deep, but maybe it's something to leave in. At the end, he said, if you were in the time of the Nazis and you had the opportunity, he would ask this question to his students, and you had the opportunity to join the Nazis, would you? And they all would say, well, most of them would say, no, I would protest, I would fight the good fight. But I don't think that's true, And he challenged that as well. He said, I don't think that's true at all, because we look at this group of people who certainly committed extreme atrocities, and it was completely vile. But once you understand that these are humans with love, empathy, children, wives, you kind of get an understanding of what we as humans are capable of. It's dangerous, it's loving, it's care, terror, all sorts of things. But that end is acceptance, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think about that?
Oh, mate, 100.
It's heavy.
No, 100% with you. Like, it reminded me of another quote. Labels are meant. Labels are not meant for people; they're meant for jars. And we want to label everything because we don't want to do the hard work to try and understand it. Every time I've drawn close to something and I've drawn closer to understanding it, then generally gives me empathy, and I have the ability to understand more. And so I'm all for doing that work. And it's so easy to just throw labels around and walk away from things. And this goes back to our discussion before. Are we going to hold hands together, and are we going to actually go together around that fire with everybody so we can actually have a better generation for our young people? Because they're the ones who are following our lead. And the lead that we've given for a long time, I wouldn't think is a great one. So, yeah, that's part how I feel about that. The other thing that it raised in me was, I remember during, the Royal Commission and all the things that were playing out in Dondale years ago, and now it still gets in the paper, because we're choosing to label the staff and label the system and label all of it the way that we do and walk away from it, we're not achieving any change or growth. So that's why Balanced Choice in particular decided to go into a place like Dondale and see if we could be part of change from the inside out. And I like the idea that when we make change, don't just stand on the outer of it and make your opinion. Get inside it and understand it. Once you understand it, then you got the right to comment on it, and then you might be part of the change. People say, oh no, you become part of the problem. No, really? I disagree with that. I've seen so many positive changes that Balanced Choice have put in there. I've seen certain people come and work in that place who have made massive change in people's lives. Let's stop demonising people. That's just too easy. That's cheap, and it's actually a lack of doing some work. Let's stop labelling people, and let's actually start to support each other.
Adam, thanks so much. You're a brilliant man who's doing brilliant work, and on behalf of me and the community, I really am excited to see what Balanced Choice is going to do in the future. I hope that the kids in there take you over. No offense.
I love it.
And thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, Addy. And I get excited just because I've been in your life for a short period of time, where you're going and your pathway. And to do this now, but imagine what this is in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now. You're probably those motivational speakers if that's where you're going. And I'll get to sit back in my old people's home and go, I did a podcast with him and he stuffed up the first one, but the second one was amazing. But mate, I really appreciate you. If I can do anything to support you and encourage your journey, mate, I just think you're an amazing young man. So thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much.